leave both straight. No, like act like I'm on my way. Please. Deal with them. I hate dealing with them. Not a good person. Not to me, he's not.
Eric is hype. What we have.
Oh.
US and globally.
Thank you very much, Alex. Paul, John, donors already giving record amounts to Vice President Kamala Harris as she launches her Democratic presidential nomination. Right after President Joe Biden announced he is out of the 2024 race, Harris raised more than $49 million from the small dollar donors. Meanwhile, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says he fully endorses Harris to be the Democratic nominee for president. Beshear has been mentioned as a possible running mate for Harris. He says while he loves his job as governor of Kentucky, if someone calls you, you at least have to listen.
The vice president is smart and strong, which will make her a good president. But she's also kind, which will make her a great president.
Beshear spoke on MSNBC. And Joe Manchin says he won't compete with Harris for the Democratic presidential nomination. The West Virginia senator of the Democratic Party this year, but had considered the nomination against Harris. The Manchin told CBS News today he would not be a candidate. The Trump campaign faces a new challenge with whoever is the new opponent. But Brown University political scientist Wendy Schiller says she doesn't expect much change in the Republican strategy.
It was effective in the debate to go after Biden on inflation and the border. That's exactly what they'll pin on Kamala Harris. You know, the advantage of a VP is that people think it's sort of the normal order of things, and that she's already sort of known some disapproval versus approval for some balance problem that she'll have to correct. But nonetheless, the Republican take a stand message should really do. It's been very effective.
Wendy Schiller of Brown University was guest on Bloomberg Daybreak. The head of the U.S. Secret Service is testifying right now before a congressional committee. Kimberly Cheatham is being grilled over recent former President Donald Trump at a Pennsylvania rally. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it. With the Bloomberg News Now, I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Paul, Alex, John.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you very much. So this was an article, in the FT that kind of detailed Warner Brothers Discovery and its mass proposals for purchasing the next round of broadcast rights to the U.S. National Basketball Association. Now, apparently this is a big deal. Apparently this is going to be sort of a proxy of something, but I need a call. I need a call to help me understand what this means. And Warner Brothers Discovery's got it down at about 4%.
Well, I'm going to quote Rich Greenfield at Lakeshed Partners Express his research note this morning. He's one of the leading voices on media research, in my opinion, on the street. And he basically just lays it out here. If you're Warner Brothers Discovery, on the one hand, you've had the NBA on TNT and CBS, whatever, for like more than 30 years. Okay. It's really part of your DNA, and they do it really, really well. However, they got outbid here by NBC / owner Comcast, who got a huge number. Lots of people feel like Comcast is overpaying, but they frequently do that. And if you're Warner Brothers Discovery, do you match that, or do you try to match and go against the Amazon package? You want to really try to get into a bit more with Amazon? So maybe just let this one go. As much as you love the NBA, it's not a good financial deal for you, number one. Number two, you've got a leverage balance sheet, and you need to be focusing on that as opposed to putting on even, taking on more liabilities like an NBA contract. So we'll have to see, but in the next short time, you will see it. Warner Brothers Discovery, owner of TNT, will try to match some of these bids for the NBA that are out there because they own the rights. They have kind of the right to come up at the end of the day and match.
Well, apparently, so Warner Brothers now pays closer to $1.2 billion per year. The Amazon is near about $1.8 billion for the annual average value, and the proposal from NBC is $2.5 billion. Just for perspective, yikes, that is a big number.
So player salaries are not under threat in any way.
Cool. Okay, I learned a lot. Thanks very much, Kelsey. Much more coming up. We're going to continue the conversation about politics, economics, as well as equity. Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst, on Harris President.
This is KNEW Oakland, USF 103.7 FM HD2 San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, programming paid for by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney.
The real outperformance has been U.S. corporate high yield.
Are the companies lean enough? Have they trimmed all the fat?
The semiconductor business is a really cyclical business.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news from across the globe.
Do investors like the M&A that we've seen?
These are two big-time blue-chip companies.
The window between the peak and cut changing super fast.
Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, coming up in this hour, we're going to check in with Nathan Dean. This is going to be a really important discussion. Nathan Dean is Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst. He's going to talk to us what it means for investors, the fact that we have President Biden stepping down and maybe Vice President Harris taking the lead there for the Democrats. What does that mean for investors? And quite frankly, Nathan Dean is one of the very few people watching the DC I really want to hear from because he's smart and he kind of breaks it down in terms that we can understand. Ryan Jacobson, Chief Economist at Annex Wealth Management, is also going to join us. And then at the bottom of the hour, around 11:30ish, we're going to dip into some comments being made by Vice President Kamala Harris at an event to the NCAA athletes. And we'll dip into that to see what she has to say about the news from over the weekend. So a lot happening in this hour, but let's kick it all off with our friend, Mr. John Tucker.
All right, Wall Street trying to recover from its worst week since April with big tech rebounding. Among the most active shares of NVIDIA, they're at the top, up 3.5%. Tesla, ahead of its earnings, they are up 4%. Alphabet and Tesla are going to report tomorrow, each again rising at least 2%. For Tesla, as I said, it's just about 4%. Verizon Communications tumbling 6%. They reported profit for the latest quarter that matched expectations, but the revenue fell short. And then more fallout from the IT debacle. CrowdStrike stock down another 11% after taking an 11% hit on Friday. Meantime, Wei Li at BlackRock advises investors, forget about the political landscape for now and keep your eyes on company performance.
Cut through the day-to-day noise and really focus on the fundamental picture. And the fundamental picture remains that the earnings growth strength remains quite strong.
Right now, the S&P 500, 51 points higher, up just about 1%, 55.57 on the index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 178 points. That's a rise of 0.4%. The NASDAQ 100, 252 points higher, and that is a rise of 1.3%. Russell 2000, the smaller cap stocks, that is up right now 0.4%. And we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash, Paul and Alex.
All right. Thanks so much, John Tucker. Alex Steele alongside Paul Sweeney and John Tucker. Welcome to Bloomberg Intelligence Radio. Happy Monday, everybody. If you were long tech, it's a happy Monday for you. Was not last week, though. I mentioned the Mag 7 ended the week with a 5% slide, and we get a lot of Mag 7 earnings as well. Tesla and Google coming out tomorrow. All right, let's get some more details here with Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News Markets reporter, joining us. What are some of the companies that you're watching, Abigail?
Well, I'm watching that big tech trade because it is an interesting rebound for sure, whether it's Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, NVIDIA. NVIDIA, very importantly, because last week NVIDIA was doing something that it had not done in quite some time, and that was hitting down to an important level of support around 118. If below that level, we will likely see NVIDIA go sharply lower. And right now, it's hugging its 50-day moving average.
Oh, yeah, it is
Yeah.
right on it. Okay.
And it's not necessarily healthy. Typically, when you see a good test, you see it hit and then kind of go back off. Whereas right now, investors, even with the stock up almost 4% today, are trying to figure out what's next. There's gaps on both sides. I would say the gaps to the downside are a little bit more powerful, and that simply reflects the idea that too far, too fast. In addition, there is a topping pattern in there, and I'm not trying to get too wonky, but that's a way of saying that those who bought back in June were less inclined to buy in July, and you can really see this stock go down quickly. Should that occur from a sentiment perspective and just from a chip perspective, because you would see other chips right along with that decline, that could be really negative for the markets overall. But today, we clearly have a rebound from all that tech selling last week that did technical damage that looks like it will come back out to play. And, if you're to connect it to, of course, the events of yesterday, last week, one reason big tech was down is that there's certainly a perception that the Trump ticket may be more negative for big tech. J.D. Vance has, not been shy in terms of saying that he would consider some crackdown, some antitrust action there. So today we're seeing a little bit of rebound. Another piece of it is with President Biden out, it was his administration that made that very baffling proposal to tighten down curbs on China chips. I'm not sure why anybody would do that given the circumstances. But if he's no longer there, we don't know that a Harris administration, a potential Harris administration, or if there's actually somebody else who's nominated to that ticket by August. And let's not say that we know that that won't be the case, because anything seems possible at this point. I think that's why we're seeing some relief for this big tech. So that's what really has my eye front and center.
NVIDIA, frustratingly, at least to me, doesn't report earnings until May 22nd. And, I feel like that's
August 22nd?
Yes, August. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
August 28th.
they're always on.
Yeah, August
Yeah.
28th. Yeah, back in
Yeah.
But it seems like that's the bellwether for the market, in my mind.
Well, speaking of that, Piper Sandler's out today saying that they think that they're going to put up a big beat. If I remember correctly, they're saying that they think that they could put up another $2 billion. I know it's going to be $1 billion, but another $2 billion beat. So this company continues to put up these massive beats, both for the quarter that was and the guidance. At some point, that is not going to continue. But so long as it does, the music hasn't stopped, and I think you're going to see. It's hard to say because honestly, this chart does not look good.
So before we let you go, any other stocks that you're watching that had some big moves? I mean, small caps are sort of doing nothing. What else is on your mind?
Well, I'm taking a look from a sort of peripheral standpoint at Verizon. It's down 6.3%. That is the worst point drag on the S&P 500. The worst day, actually, funny enough, just since last Monday, down for a second day.
Last Monday was like a year ago, though.
I know, which is kind of amazing. But they missed estimates as fewer customers upgraded their wireless equipment. So, this is one of those cyclical matters. Plus, out of the October lows of last week into today, up 40%. So, prices to perfection to some degree, and investors didn't get it. So that stock, again, the worst drag on the S&P 500, countering all that big tech strength.
That's all right. Abigail Doolittle, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Abigail, she covers all the markets for Bloomberg. We appreciate getting a few minutes of her time here. Again, in terms of the earnings, Tesla and Google tomorrow after the close. Keep an eye on that. All right. You woke up, or yesterday, I'm coming out of the ocean. Get back to my little group of people. Probably with some of the slides out. You're like, oh, here we go.
I have a better one for you.
Yeah.
We were at the Bloomberg event at the Botanical Gardens, and you could just see like all the media people were like on their phones, and my daughter's like, "Mommy, don't worry about it. It's Sunday," and I'm like, "I don't know.
question is, and we're all trying to start to figure out what could all this mean. Fortunately, we have a person that we pay to do this. Nathan Dean, he's a senior policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. He's in D.C. He's really good. Nathan, what's in your sourcing and the people you talk to down in D.C., what's the feeling today about what happened to the Democratic ticket over the last 24 hours?
Well, I mean, look, there's been a lot of pressure on President Biden over the last couple of weeks to drop out, and, I think this just culminated with this effort that, Vice President Kamala Harris has filled that void. Now, look, she's not the nominee. That doesn't happen until either there's a virtual roll call or to the convention, but we've seen so many endorsements over the last few hours and, just so forth that, we're presuming that she is the nominee in our research and our notes. And so we put out actually a big note on the terminal this morning talking about what would life be like under a Harris presidency, and it's a lot of status quo for banks, EVs, big tech, and so forth like that. The one caveat is on taxes. We've often said that this election is really two major things happening. One, tariffs and taxes. And Kamala Harris's record in her tax, aspect of it is a little bit more, I'd say progressive than what President Biden has said. But ultimately, we viewed President Biden as moving more towards Kamala Harris's policies when he became president, rather than Kamala Harris moving towards Biden's policies. So a lot of this, if she becomes president, will be status quo.
Oh, that's really interesting. So I was going to ask, where is Vice President Harris farther left than President Biden? Where is that biggest daylight?
So the one thing that we actually hung down on was her record as Attorney General, and just indicative of one of her actions is she joined about 47 other states, including the District of Columbia, on a $25 billion settlement on home foreclosure practices. And a lot of her campaign speeches when she was running for president in 2020 was talking about how she took on big banks. Now, to us that means there's a lot more consumer protection coming in the cards, whether it's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or whether it comes through acts of Congress, or maybe it's even executive orders like continuing President Biden's student debt relief ban. But I think there's going to be a lot of focus on this idea of low to middle income consumers, protections against big corporations, and a lot more in terms of disclosures and so forth like that. Now, is this a material impact on big tech or on the big banks? Probably not. A lot of it has to get passed through Congress, but ultimately, it's certainly a headline risk that I would keep in mind for those sectors. In particular, is just to keep in mind, that if she were to focus on this, and specifically, let's just pick on antitrust. If she were to focus on antitrust, there's a lot of, intense scrutiny, more scrutiny than she put there than a Biden administration could.
All right, a lot of my M&A banker buddies are wondering, what would a Harris administration mean for antitrust, because Biden's been nobody into the M&A world. Is it feeling status quo there as well?
This is one of those situations where I think whoever wins as president is probably not going to be helpful to your M&A banker buddies, because on one hand you have the continuation of the Biden presidency with Lena Khan at the FTC and taking a very skeptical look at mergers. I mean, just in the financial space alone, some of these merger reviews go over a year, if not longer, and we saw certainly with the TD Financial merger, they pulled out as a result of this. But then on the flip side, you have Senator Vance and President Trump, and remember, this idea of economic populism is rampant through that RNC agenda at the moment. So, Senator Vance even came down to a Bloomberg event here in Washington and called Lena Khan, the FTC chairwoman, Biden's best pick, and insinuated that President Biden would President Trump should even keep her around. Now, I don't happen, but unfortunately, Paul, for your M&A banker buddies, I don't think any other way this gets around, whether it's Harris or Trump, it's going to be a very skeptical world for antitrust and M&A.
So Paul's talking to his M&A buddies. I'm thinking about my energy buddies, because one area where it feels like President Harris could be farther left, of course, is energy. I was telling Paul earlier that he's been kind of anti-fracking, anti-offshore. California is notoriously not loving any fossil fuels. How much of that do you think we have to really start considering?
I think it's important to consider it. In fact, our colleague Rob Barnett just put out a note about 40 minutes ago talking about this and the importance it has on the renewable sector. So, Senator Harris, Vice President Harris, certainly has pursued the clean energy agenda. And one of the things we see in, her presidency is a boosting of the Inflation Reduction Act. I don't want to say going back to the Build Back Better 3.0, some of the ideas that were floated around. She'll have her own ideas here, but this idea of the Inflation Reduction Act needs to be protected and enhanced. So if you're in the renewable sector or solar sector, it certainly could be a boon idea if Vice President Harris wins. But I would also just recommend it, or I would also just offer this, that a lot of it also depends on who takes up Congress, because if Vice President Harris wins and the Republicans take one, if not two chambers of the House, then a lot of those initiatives are going to be scaled down and actually dramatically lowered and so forth like that.
All right. We know Elon Musk is a big supporter of Trump, but it sounds like what would a Democratic Harris administration mean for the Elon Musk of the world and the EVs?
So, for the EV side, I think it's actually a continuation of the Inflation Reduction Act tax credit, if not an enhancement of that. Look, tax reform is going to have to happen next year no matter what, because the Trump-era tax cuts for individuals expires at the tail end of 2025. And whether it's Vice President Harris or President Trump, neither of them are going to want to increase taxes for low, middle, and income, Americans. So for the EVs of the world, I would say under a Harris presidency, you'll certainly have protection from that tax credit in the IRA. You potentially could have an enhancement of that. You certainly will have regulatory policies trying to boost EV usage and so forth like that. Comparing it against the President Trump presidency, where he has said that he doesn't like electric vehicles. Obviously, he has Elon Musk whispering in his ear and providing $45 million a month in PAC funding. But ultimately, I think the Republicans probably would see a scaling back of those tax credits. Maybe just additional restrictions on EVs and so forth like that. But with the Trump presidency, we'll have to see if he wins, and also if Elon Musk is whispering in his ear in January and February.
Taxes. If former President Trump were to get a second term, is there any consensus in Washington, given the makeup of Congress? I guess we have to see how Congress shakes out. But what, if anything, could a Trump administration get done on taxes?
Yeah, so, the way I think about the tax debate with my colleague Andrew Silverman is really in terms of timing. So the first thing you'll note is the election. If the Republicans take the House and the Senate and the presidency, then they have this opportunity for reconciliation. This is how they got the Trump-era tax cuts through in 2017. It allows them to actually move forth and enhance or, essentially conduct tax reform, and they can bypass the Democrats. So if the Republicans win the House, the Senate, and the presidency, then this President Trump's idea of lowering corporate tax rates is certainly in the cards. Now, I have seen statements from House Republicans saying, maybe we don't want to do that so much, but I do think that this would be President Trump driving this. Now, if you get more of a gridlock Congress, well, then the power of Congress is going to come out, and the House and Ways and Means Committee, whoever controls it, is certainly going to want to play here and tell the presidency this is what we think. And so, if you get a gridlock Congress, a lot of the tax reform or tax relief ideas that are out there are going to be scaled down and narrowed, but with one objective: not to increase the individual tax relief or tax cut for that individual. If you get President Harris, you make the tax increases for individuals who make greater than $400,000, but I think most individuals in the United States at the end of 2025 probably won't have their taxes altered all that much.
Literally, my head hurts from all the different possibilities. I do not know how you do this, Nathan, on a daily basis at all the individual sectors. Okay, before I let you go, now what? Now what are you paying attention for? What is most on your radar now as you go talk to clients?
So, the most important thing for us is obviously, does Kamala Harris become the vice president or the presidential nominee? I think she will. Just remember, the Democrats have to have a virtual roll call to get their person on the ballot for the state of Ohio. I would anticipate that starting in August 1st. Next thing would be, Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick. We're cautioning clients, look, she has plenty of time. She's going to do this in a way that is politically advantageous to her, and she doesn't have to name somebody until the convention in Chicago in mid to late August. So, those are probably the two most important things. But also just remember, on the flip side, the tariff argument for President Trump is real, and it's certainly a risk that I think investors should pay attention to.
All right, Nathan, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Really, really great stuff. Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence, Senior Policy Research. I cannot recommend his research enough because it can go into all the different sectors as well as kind of game out the different possibilities and where we kind of go from here.
And, so I guess that virtual roll call thing, or the virtual, that's a key date, right?
Yeah, apparently that happens between August 1st and August 7th. That's what I was reading about yesterday. And my mind is also spinning as to what winds up going to the court in terms of where the money is accessed and who was able to get control of all that fundraising money. Also in terms of getting the ticket on the ballot in all the states. I don't know.
I kind of like these snap elections that the UK and Europe holds. It just gets it done real quickly.
You know what I like about the UK? Is that you're not allowed to campaign for a long period of time. You have very strict campaign
How
time.
about the signs on the lawn thing? Is there any rules on that? Because
Yeah.
that's a big issue for us out in suburbia.
I don't think you can do that. I mean, I'm kind of making that up, but I mean, they have some strong restrictions. Anyway, much more coming up. We are going to continue the conversation about the markets and what it means for the election. Brian Jacobson, Chief Economist at Annex Wealth Management, will be joining us.
Every weekday, Bloomberg brings you the best in politics twice a day.
A lot of campaign news to talk about today.
Join Joe Matthew and Kaylee Line for Balance of Power every weekday at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m.
We're talking about what motivates Republican voters.